All right, the U.S. Supreme Court's decision overturning the infamous 1973 Roe ruling has left, as we've been talking about, the left enraged and frantic. I really believe they did not think it was going to happen because they thought they had a lock on the courts, as we were just talking about with Jonathan Mitchell. Well, today the president signed an executive order that promotes abortion access. The vice president then met with Democratic legislators from red states. And as we've talked about earlier, Senator Elizabeth Warren is calling for pregnancy resource centers to be shut down.
We need to shut them down here in Massachusetts, and we need to shut them down all around the country. You should not be able to torture a pregnant person like that.
Oh, where do I even begin with that? Well, first, it would be not a pregnant person, it'd be a pregnant woman. I know that's hard for them to bring themselves to recognize that it is women that have babies. But to torture them by letting them see the life that is within them, that they might make a choice that they will not regret for the rest of their lives. And we know that. We know that from actual filings with the Supreme Court from women who had abortions and the trauma that they faced afterwards because they were not given the facts by the abortion clinics. Then you have Congresswoman Cori Bush vowing to advance legislation to repeal the pro-life Hyde Amendment. And I mean, there's a lot more happening. In fact, next week is going to be like abortion week on Capitol Hill. So what's driving this, and what sorts of action should conservatives be engaging in to counter all this? What are the opportunities that are before us right now? Well, join me now to talk about this and more is our good friend Dr. Ben Carson, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, a 2016 Republican presidential candidate, and the former director of the pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins. He is now founder and chairman of the American Cornerstone Institute. Dr. Carson, welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you, Tony. Thank you for being such a trooper when it comes to abortion.
Well, you know, you and I were actually together the day that the decision was handed down. We were in Lafayette, Louisiana, and in fact, speaking on a panel together. But a lot has happened in those 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks ago today that we were there. The left has just gone crazy about this. And it's almost as if they don't recognize how driven they are for abortion. I mean, they're being exposed, I think. I think most Americans are saying, why? How can you be so dedicated to killing babies?
Yeah, I don't think they've really stopped to think about what they're doing. They're driven by ideology. And if they would just take a moment to think about it, all the things that we have learned since 1973 when Roe v. Wade was enacted about what's going on in a mother's womb. And it's pretty easy to see that that is a life that is in there. That is a human being with a face and arms and legs and a heart beating, moving around, reacting, and much more sophisticated than a snail darter, which many of them are trying to save. So they really haven't stopped to think about that. And I don't think they've thought about the fact that if you kill a pregnant woman, you get 2 charges of murder. So obviously, if that's the case, and if the law recognizes that, recognizing it also. But, we have to be the ones who have to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, as the Bible tells us.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get your reaction to the president's executive order today that he signed, and really 4 main aspects of this executive order. I mean, he's been looking for what he can do. He's told his Department of Health and Human Services to make sure that women have access to the abortion pill, which records last year indicates about 52% of abortions were through the abortion pill. But there's complications with that. We talked about that yesterday on the program. But the 4 main categories in today's executive order was safeguarding access to reproductive health services. This is essentially a request for HHS to submit a report in 30 days on what they are doing to educate on abortion and contraception. Then protecting patient privacy and access to accurate information. Now, this is where they get involved with the Federal Trade Commission And this is the same place that Senator Warren is. I think they're going to use this to go after the care pregnancy centers. And this is something that I know you care about because you've been helping a lot of those care pregnancy centers that have full medical staff. They have doctors that volunteer, that help, that are giving women real medical choices. They're going to try to shut them down.
Yeah, and these are wonderful people who work at these clinics. Many of them are volunteering substantial amounts of their time in order to try to not only save babies, but to provide a better life for women who frequently feel as though they're trapped and that they don't have a choice. And what they're doing is making sure that they understand that they do have choices and that we're not simply going to say to them, don't get an abortion and goodbye and good riddance. No, in fact, we're going to say, we're going to help you. We're going to help your baby. We're going to help your family because, it doesn't just affect the woman, it affects her entire family. And we have to be cognizant of that. And, the left who wants to destroy these places, I find, the president also said, we're going to try to make sure that these places are safe. That is the places that are doing abortions. How about the places that are offering other types of care? Why is he not concerned about the fact that some of them have been firebombed and destroyed in other ways? This is really so disgusting, the way that that's being handled.
Yeah, there's no discussion here about those care pregnancy centers and other pro-life groups that have, I think now the count is near 60 that have been targeted, as you said, some with firebombs. So I want to move forward a little bit on this, Dr. Carson, because the left's all worked up, and they're going to continue to be, and they're going to try to do everything they can. But I think we should be doing everything we can to continue to promote the culture of life. So what are the opportunities? I mean, every time you see a challenge, to me, that says opportunity. And I think we have a tremendous opportunity right now because, number one, we've got a great court decision that has returned this to the states for the most part, and we can have these discussions with family, with friends, in legislatures. We can have people running for office. So what are some of those opportunities you see ahead for us?
Well, for one thing, we can start working on the adoption process. It is incredibly expensive to adopt an American baby, which is why people adopt them from foreign countries, and a very cumbersome and lengthy process. We should be able to streamline that, make it safe and effective. That would make a big difference. We also need to make sure that we have appropriate wraparound services for these women, including in many cases educational opportunities. So many of them really have not advanced very far on the educational spectrum. And the likelihood is that any children that they have would not advance far either. So that's a tremendous opportunity. And it's an opportunity also to talk about right and wrong, about faith, about some of the things that were so important to the founding of this country, the things that gave us the fortitude and the strength to defeat the most powerful military force on earth. We cannot discount the role that faith has played and the understanding and the discussion of right and wrong.
I want to talk about that educational component, the moral component, because that's not something that's being produced in our education system in America, our public education system in America. In fact, it is the counter. I mean, we just saw the National Education Association having their annual meeting this week, and they were focused on abortion rights. They were focused on transgenderism, not focused on providing a moral foundation for our children and a love for this country. That's become a big focus of yours, is to begin to train children, to expose them to America's history, to create little patriots. You've got some new resources out. Tell our viewers and listeners about it.
Yeah, well, we have a new program starting in the Little Patriots Forum that is called Star Spangled Adventures. Star Spangled Adventures, and it tells the real history of America without politics. Beautiful animations. We've hired some of the the best talent from Disney and Pixar and ABC Kids, the people who are non-woke, by the way, to illustrate these things. And the quality is extraordinary. And there are lesson plans that go with each presentation that can be used by parents, grandparents, teachers, any group of people. There are downloadable exercises so that when you go off in the car or in the airplane, you can print these out and continue the educational process. And they're fun. And we also, and best of all, it's free of charge. We have wonderful sponsors who have underwritten it to make sure it's free. We also have new books, Why America Matters, and a new one that was just released this week called Red, White, and Blue. Our flag matters to me and you. And it starts with a little boy looking at a torn and tattered American flag on the ground. And then Liberty Eagle, who is the guide, comes and explains to him the significance of the red, the white, and the blue, the stars and the stripes, and the people who bled and died so that we could have freedom. By the time you get to the end of that book, you're bursting with pride. And when you see that flag, you want to stand, you want to salute it. We do all this without denigrating the people who want to kneel and who want to denigrate our nation. That's not what it's about. It's about the positive aspects. It's about why we should be proud of the nation that we happen to be in and do everything we can to preserve those freedoms for the people who are coming after us. Oh, and by the way, all the proceeds from the book shoveled right back into the Little Patriots program so that we can continue to make these offerings free of charge.
And folks, I want to encourage you, maybe homeschool. It's a great resource for churches. We've got to think creatively about how we recapture education, something, Dr. Carson, we talk a lot about on this program, because if we're successful, for instance, we've talked on this program about how we got to this point of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. It's been, for me, it's been 30 years in the making. For others, it's been even longer. But we've been involved in elections. We've held positions of office. We've run for office, like yourself. We've taught. We've challenged. We've passed legislation. I've passed some of the first in my home state of Louisiana on certain aspects of the life issue. It took us a while to get there. We've succeeded at this point. A lot of work still to be done, as we've talked about. But if we don't reach the next generation, this is just a matter of time. And so when we have an educational system that is indoctrinating, we've got to counter it with the truth. And you're taking a part of that by teaching these young children what America's about and teaching them to be proud and to love this country.
Train up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he'll not depart from it. We have to give them that real history, recognizing that your history gives you your identity, and your identity is the basis of your beliefs. And if you interrupt that chain, then you become a leaf blowing in the wind, easily swayed. And that's not who we are in this country. And I do believe that that is actually a big part of what's going to save us, unlike many other countries that have been in this position, because our founders knew that we would be in this position, quite frankly. But we have the fortitude and we have the tools in our Constitution which will save us, which will not, for instance, allow the government to take away our ability to defend ourselves. All of these are important tools that our founders knew would be necessary as time went on. And that's why Benjamin Franklin, when asked, what do we have here, sir, after the Constitution was done, a republic or a monarchy? And he said, a republic, if we can keep it.
And it requires work. It requires participation, not being spectators in the process. And the place to start is right in the home, in teaching our children. Because I heard a historian one time said it's not as important what your history was as what you think it was in terms of determining your future. And so we have to know our real history, but we've got to teach that real history so that our children will know it and they will act upon it. Dr. Ben Carson, very quickly, before we go, tell folks how they can find out more about the Little Patriots program.
littlepatriotslearning.com. And you can find out about all of our programs at American Cornerstone by going to americancornerstone.org. But if you just type in Little Patriots, it'll come right up anyway, which is good.
We're so grateful for the work that you're doing, and that you didn't have to, but you love this country, and so you've stayed in the battle, and we're honored to battle alongside you.
And thank you for what you do, what you've been doing for decades. It is such an inspiration to so many people. And if we all work in our sphere of influence toward the good, we will succeed.
Absolutely, with the Lord's blessing. Dr. Carson, have a great weekend.
All right, you too, Tony. Take care.